All right, thank you for staying with Citizen TV Monday Report. Kindly send in your views and comments at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. We're talking about waste management in the country. We know it is still an issue up until today. We know Kenya produces between 3,000 to 4,000 tons of waste every day. 80% of that is organic waste. What to do with organic waste is the main concern here. And it's also a $54 billion industry. How come people are not taking advantage of it? But we have those who have taken advantage of it, like Dr. Taiba Hatimi, CEO of Staka Enterprises, here with us. Thank you so much for making time. Dr. Ayub Macharia, Director Environmental Enforcement, NEMA, thank you very much for making time. James Odongo, CEO, KEPRO, thank you very much for making time. And Omiti Odhiambo, Programs Manager, Kenya Alliance of Residents Association, KARA, thank you very much for making time. And James, I'll start with you. KEPRO has been doing some initiatives when it comes to encouraging better waste disposal.
Yes.
What are some of the achievements and challenges that you've seen firsthand? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. I think just to also set context for the conversation today, is first to speak about who KEPRO is. So KEPRO, as you've rightly put it, the Kenya Extended Producer Responsibility Organization, is an organization bringing together stakeholders within the waste value chain. So you're talking about 4 different categories of our membership. You're talking about the manufacturers, who in this case, the packaging manufacturers for non-hazardous products. You're also talking about the brand owners, who would ordinarily use the packaging to sell their products. And then now the waste management operators. Here you're talking about the recyclers, waste pickers, as well as the aggregators. And the idea for us, and speaking to our theory of change, is that we are brought together by a common vision, where we believe that planet and profit can be able to coexist. So representing around 850 members, we try and ensure that the end-of-life disposal of their products is done in a sustainable manner. And of course, that which is we are not able to recycle is properly disposed and in essence, try to divert waste from the landfill. So speaking to what you've asked about our engagement with the members of the public, earlier this year, we launched what we are calling the consumer-led transformation, because it is our belief as an organization that the waste value chain, the consumer is the primary stakeholder. And so however much KEPRO will be pumping in the money, getting the money from the 850 members that we represent, the initiative, the first step towards proper disposal of the waste starts at household level. So if the consumer is putting the waste in the right bin and safely disposing it as required in terms of the recycling ecosystem, then we can be able to achieve as much as possible as far as diverting waste from landfill is concerned. So through the consumer-led transformation, we've been able to cover around 7 regions in the country, reaching approximately 26 counties. Immediate wins is that we are now getting to appreciate or inspire action amongst members of the public, where we are seeing now some increased awareness on really what is the role of the consumer as far as proper disposal of waste is concerned, supporting the recycling ecosystem in the country and the likes. And then also an appreciation of this whole conversation around sustainable waste management. For the longest time, the conversation on sustainable waste management has sort of been seen as a preserve of a few. But the idea for us is to try to demystify this conversation, instigate social dialogues at the very granular levels within our societies, to be able to give that agency feeling to the consumer, to be able to start taking inspired action. So we are seeing quite a number of initiatives in that respect, or in what we are calling the inspired action. In terms of the challenges, so one of the primary challenges that we are facing is that there's a challenge of infrastructure. So a question comes in and one asks you, James, after I've properly disposed of my waste, I've segregated it dry and wet waste, then the off-taker of this waste is going to mix it in one truck or an off-taking infrastructure. So really that is one major challenge. And of course, the other bit is about the slow paces that are usually involved around trying to instigate or inspire behavior change. So, of course, this is something that can take years to try and ensure that a consumer who has ordinarily been brought up knowing that waste is a nuisance and the safest way to dispose it is getting it out of my site, and trying to bring them and capacity build them and ensure that they have this knowledge that they can properly dispose of their waste, and such action is actually supporting an existing economy in the country, is another challenge and headache that we have to deal with. And of course, the other bit is now the long-term intervention as far as involvement of the producer. So we have what we were talking about earlier on. There's a Sustainable Waste Management Act of 2022 introducing a law that requires the producer to now take responsibility of their products throughout the life cycle of the product. So there are still a smaller or quite a significant number of producers who are also not yet aware of this law. And really, for those who are aware, others still treat it as a nuisance. So those are a few of the challenges that we are facing as KPRO, and of course, a few of the wins we've also been able to achieve.
And that really summarizes what our conversation today here is really about. How do we get people, the buy-in from the people? And let me bring in Omiti on this. When we talk about the issue of consumer-led transformation, what does that look like for you? Do the people take responsibility for the waste that they generate? And what is the challenge?
Thanks, Trevor. So to just also introduce CARA. CARA is the Kenya Alliance of Resident Association, a network of resident association. Currently, we have over 1,500 resident associations in our network with over 3 million residents in these networks, cutting across all the income levels. So you go to Muthaiga, you get our members, that is high income level. You come to middle income level, the Kilimanis, you get our members. You go to the low income level, the Eastlands. I would mention Makongeni and Komarok, you get our members. And putting this into context, I would say that the residents associations, to sustainably manage waste, I think the resident associations are the go-to places. I would give an example. Currently, the Act requires us to involve residents in managing waste. That is the Sustainable Management Act of 2022. And the Act is so clear that if we don't segregate at the household level, then there is a charge of 20,000 Kenya shillings. You will be charged 20,000 Kenya shillings if you don't separate your waste at source. And who is the best placed person to support with this compliance issue? I think the best placed organizations or organized groups are resident associations. I would quickly give an example. You go to organized neighborhoods where we have resident associations, where you have our members, or you will quickly see that waste is sustainably managed in these areas. You go to where there are no organized communities or resident associations, you find challenges in managing waste. So I would say that for us to sustainably manage waste, let us involve the resident association. I think with the initiatives that we are trying to initiate, like CARA, we call it establishment of the model estates. So trying to involve residents in managing this or segregating waste at source. A major challenge is, I think, the issue of culture, then the issue of, the waste management systems that we have in place in these communities, starting from the national level. So we don't have systems to support managing waste, but then if these systems are in place, we also have a culture. I would give you an example. Currently, we are rolling out an initiative with support of Denmark. That is the Danish embassy. We've tried to establish these model estates so that they can manage their waste sustainably. The major challenge is the issue of, you go to these estates, you give them the required tools and equipments. The challenge will be these equipments are being stolen. So there's the issue of theft. Then there's the issue of, people just not wanting to separate. Waste bin that you provide, people turn them into buckets for shopping. Waste bins you provide, people turn them into, bathing stations. The equipment that you provide, people turn them into all sorts of things. So the issue of culture, how do we come up with initiatives that can support change the culture?
Okay.
So in a nutshell, I'm saying that we have beautiful laws.
Yeah.
The current law that we have in place, to sustainably support its implementation, if we could use the organized groups, and these I mean the resident associations. You go to places where neighborhood are organized, low income, high and middle-level income, they've done extremely well.
Okay.
The low-income levels are trying. Go to a place like Makongeni.
Yeah.
There's organized way of collecting this waste.
Okay. And Dr. Taiba, you were speaking earlier on to Edward Chwea in our citizen conversation earlier on, and you talked about the app that you have that tracks waste from the producer all the way to the end. Just briefly, what are the biggest challenges you've seen with that? Because I heard you mention organic waste, but now we're talking about segregation at the producer's point, at home. What are the biggest challenges you've dealt with?
Thank you, Trevor. So the biggest challenge we've had is cultural resistance. Yeah. For example, in Mombasa, we ran a pilot project in Old Town community, which is a low-income to middle-income community. We have ingrained community behaviors and mindset where they are used to dumping all types of waste in one bin. Now, when you come up and tell them now you need to segregate your waste into separate bins, they don't see the value in that. So we have that cultural resistance, which is reducing the recycling rate. Another challenge that we're having is limited infrastructure. You might be telling the communities that we require, the Sustainable Waste Management Act requires you to segregate your waste at source, right? But then they tell you we don't have the bins, one. If they don't have the bins, they say our households are so small, we don't have space for the bins, we want to use gunias. And even if they use gunias, they will get onto the app or use the USSD platform, which is integrated onto the app. Unfortunately, in Mombasa, we have a challenge of unauthorized waste managers. So they come, they collect your waste, maybe you segregated it, they'll take it and go illegally dump it somewhere, and it ends up mixed. So those are the two major challenges that we are facing in Mombasa.
And one of the issues you mentioned was organic waste, but we'll talk about that in just a bit. Let me bring in first Dr. Ayub on this. Dr. Ayub, how are you marrying the policy issues and the reality on the ground? Because when we talk about the sustainable waste management, it has beautiful laws like what Omid is saying, but the implementation is a challenge. Even the segregation, for example, people say that I don't have the bins to separate my waste.
Thank you. Thank you, Travis. Let me first of all introduce my organization, because that is where I come from. I work for NEMA, the National Environment Management Authority. Our work is to supervise and coordinate all matters of environment. And waste management is one key environmental issue. And for us to work, we need the policies, which we already have. We have Sustainable Waste Management Policy of 2021, and then the Act, the Sustainable Waste Management Act of 2022. And coming to your question, do we have a gap? We don't have a gap at the moment. Of course, we have to appreciate the fact that 2022 is just 2 years away. That is when we had the Act, and we know that different institutions are reorganizing themselves, like counties. Of course, the law prescribed what we call a radical shift in waste management. It was radical in the sense that it requires that we transition towards zero waste. And that involves circular economy. Circular economy is where we recover as much waste as possible. And as we recover, of course, there is the issue of once you recover, where do you take it? It must be recycled. And you know, most of our of our products are not, some of the products we have in the country are not recyclable. And so there is that challenge of the fact that some of the products that were coming and are still coming to Kenya, they are not recyclable, and so they score very poorly in terms of circularity. And that is why the challenge has remained. And also, coming up with the radical aspect also involved not taking our waste to the usual place. The usual place was the dump site. So the law stipulated that our waste should be taken to a material recovery facility so that as much waste as possible is recovered, so that we move towards zero. These material recovery facilities were not there. Now, you may ask me then, why did the government enact a law knowing that the facilities were not there? And we had foreseen that, and we did not want to cause a disruption. We did not propose a disruption. What we have been advising counties to do, because they are the ones in charge of waste management as per the Constitution Schedule 4, is that let the waste move to the usual place. That is, the designated waste management facilities called dumpsites. But that dump site should be reorganized. Reorganized in the sense that one side should be reserved to handle organic waste, and then the other side should handle the dry waste, and then the residual waste should be taken to the third point in the same place, the landfill. And that way, we thought that the trucks will continue moving to the same place, but move in a different way, such that we would make sure that we do enforcement at the gate to make sure that the truck that brings waste to the dump site only brings segregated waste, because segregation is key in waste management. If waste is not segregated, then it is contaminated and we cannot recover the waste. So those are some of the interventions that we have put in place. It is not difficult, like I have said. It doesn't require more land. The land that we have is sufficient, only that we need to reorganize it. And once the trucks are told not to bring the mixed waste to the dump site, they would spread the same message, create awareness to the customers out there in the estates, like my brother from Kara has said, so that everybody segregates at source, and so that we recover as much waste as possible.
Okay. James, are you seeing a disconnect? Dr. says that there's no disconnect between the law and the actual processes on the ground, but are you seeing a disconnect between the sustainable waste management and what you're running right now? For example, the sustainable waste management calls for MRFs, which is the material recovery facilities, but you're pushing for consumer-led transformation. So are you seeing a disconnect there? Which one should come first?
Okay. Trevor, not to try and sound politically correct, but I'd want to concur with Dr. Ayub, where we are saying that the Sustainable Waste Management Act was proposing very radical changes. So we need to understand that the conversation on circular economy is a pretty foreign concept in Kenya and, of course, globally. So coming into 2022, where we are saying that there are new and radical changes that are supposed to be disruptive into the ecosystem, it will require some initiatives and steps to be taken as we go. So, for instance, we have the Constitution coming in 2010, but we are yet to implement all the facets and the provisions of the law as provided for by the Constitution. So in supporting what Dr. Ayub is saying and sort of responding to your question, yes, it's usually a painfully slow, yet gradual process. A material recovery facility, first, it's quite a capital-intensive project.
Yeah, because most counties have not even implemented it. They don't have the money to.
Exactly. The operationalization bit about it is also quite a complicated undertaking, recognizing that county governments are not necessarily supposed to be engaging in profitable businesses. The EPR regulations that are supposed to operationalize these material recovery facilities are also not yet there. Then the reality on the ground is that not all county governments will require material recovery facilities because of the economic aspects to it.
So the economies of scale in terms of production of waste determines whether you require one or not.
Exactly. So, and maybe sort of to backtrack, my answer would be twofold. So even as you're saying there are certain processes that will take a bit of time, we're also seeing a bit of a lapse in terms of government enforcement. So when you're talking about, even as we talk about segregation of waste at source, there's also the issue about illegal dumping. So the illegal dumping is happening, and we are not seeing any sort of enforcement to curb that. So we'll be seeing some sort of other ad hoc interventions that might not necessarily be sustainable. But we are hoping that, of course, once the EPR regulations come into place and other regulatory provisions that are associated with the Sustainable Waste Management Act, then we'll see some sort of traction towards the right direction.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Omiti, how do you involve the people in this? Because you've said that the segregation is the biggest issue. There's a penalty of 20,000 shillings, but they still use the bins for other purposes. Mm-hmm. So what can be done so that we have people knowing that this is their responsibility, especially residents associations and the people themselves there?
Yes. So if I may just go back a little bit and answer what Dr. Ayub has mentioned on issue of policy.
Yeah.
I think this policy issue, it's not even coming at the right time, because currently the policy has just documented what has been happening. People are already segregating. If you go to my house, if I buy a soda, a 1 liter, I'll use that plastic to store drinking water for several weeks. There are take-back schemes. If today I go to the bar, buy a bottle of beer, I'll be told to leave 30 bob, go with this bottle home, then take it back, take my 30 bob. So if I buy a newspaper today, I'll not want to throw them away. Electronic waste. If my phone today, it stops working, I'll just keep it. So I would say people are already segregating. The policy is just documenting what has been happening. Mm-hmm. Only that at a larger scale, people are not doing this. So there is some level of segregation already happening. Yeah. What are we currently doing to help or to support the implementation? What Dr. Ayub and the group should be doing is coming to us as the resident associations or as the residents of this, great country, is to have a conversation around what is working and what is not working. For example, they've proposed a 3-bin or a 4-bin, that we need to have 4 bins for separating, or we need to have 3. Yeah. We may suggest 2, because I may be having a bed sitter. Where will I be putting these other 3 or 4? I may not be having enough space to put all the bins for separation. When it comes to what we are currently doing, I think at the policy level, there are those conversations. Yeah. At the neighborhood level, what we are doing currently is creating awareness and using simple tactics. I think sports to activate. There are dialogues around neighborhoods on segregation. We are working with the resident associations, committee members, or the leadership of the resident association. And I think this is very sustainable, because the leadership of the resident association, these resident associations are voluntary in nature. People form them to protect and secure their neighborhood. They want to live in places where it's healthy and secure. Mm-hmm. So we are building the capacity of these resident associations, leadership through the TOT program, so that they can pass this message to other members. Social enterprise. Yeah. There's business in this. How are we activating this? There are a lot of job opportunity, green job opportunity in this space. Mm. So engaging youth groups, and this is where we are having a fight with the county and the national government at the NEMA. Why are we not recognizing these informal groups so that they be at the central stage? I'm happy that the Act is really keen, or is speaking about organizing these youth so that they play a central role in helping us with the collection. So I think those are the major issues that we are currently doing. Yeah. Awareness creation, capacity building, then the last one, social enterprise, and having projects that people can adopt.
All right. I'll take a quick break on Monday Report. When we come back, we'll take some of your questions and your comments as well. And Dr. Taiba will come back with you to talk about the innovative ways that you're putting up now to deal with waste management. Keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. See you in just a bit.